Test. And good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to those of you in the main cabin. Can I get a wave or a hello or something? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so, yeah, okay. That's the power of the microphone. But welcome. Beautiful afternoon. Warm afternoon. We're kind of thankful for these kind of days. Believe it or not, I know most of you are standing in line. It's pretty hot there. We're standing by the ticket office building. But there are days in November and December and January and February and March and April.
Yeah, I think
we wait for days like this. So we'll kind of welcome them. Yeah, it's kind of 100% day. So we'll put off a little warmth. And I know those of you in the main cabin are a little warm, but once we get out into the main part of the upper Waterton Lake, we're going to get a bit of a breeze. Not a lot of wind here. I guess that's what makes it kind of particularly grateful for that today. We usually get a lot of wind at this north end of the lake, but as we pull out of the marina here and out of the bay, around this second yellow buoy, you'll get a look where our little journey or cruise is going to take us this afternoon for about an hour and 15 minutes. So we turn in about 1:15 back here to the marina. So you'll still have plenty of time to enjoy. Off to your right and to the south, a little bit of a haze today. I don't know if it's just like haze or humidity. All the shoreline, for the most part, we do cross over. We make a figure eight. So wherever you're sitting, you'll get a shore view and a lake view kind of thing. So. But we can go anywhere Chris wants to take us, so he's kind of a master in command, pilot in command. So. If you have any questions along, that's later. Family trips. Well, days like today, we do 5 trips a day. Even though on days like today, we do 5 trips a day. Days like this, and then in the evenings, we go out on our private boats. Later on. How far did the fire? Sure, most of you, if you've been in the park, well, it's obviously the aftermath of the forest fire. You can see here a major event here in the area in 2017. And he asked how far did the fire go down the lake. And you will see here just a little bit farther, another 5 or 10 minutes, you'll see the character of this afternoon. You will see a few boat docks. There's 3 around the lake. And again, anybody can bring their boat out onto the lake. And we see some fishermen. It's a very deep, cold mountain lake. People fish this lake will fish for lake trout, but a very deep, cold mountain lake again. So it's the fish you find in this lake are the fish basically that eat other fish. There's some white fish. But if you want better fishing, go up into the backcountry lakes. Rainbow, cutthroat, brook trout. You want to hike into those backcountry lakes. So, but they're not real good for fishing in the lake, but they fish real deep this time of the year. So there's a boat dock here off to your left. This is the Crip Lake Trailhead for the hike goes up to Crip Lake. Has anybody heard about the Crip Lake hike? So, a few folks maybe. Yeah, just a handful kind of thing. Just briefly mentioned it. This is the trailhead. In fact, one of the services we offer here with our boat company this morning at 8:30 and at 9 o'clock. Using this boat, we ferry people over from the town side of Waterton, drop them off at that boat dock, and they started up the trail that goes up this valley that will kind of open up here. This is where around this lake, kind of mentioned back there's no really habitation. I mentioned that it has a big bathtub shape to it. If we could drain the water out of the lake and look at it on the cross section like the letter U, very steep size, but as it would move into the bottom, it kind of gently slopes into the bottom. It's like a big bathtub. So, but no bath water in it. You won't see many people swimming, although it looks pretty inviting, especially back in the marina. You can see a few people wading, that kind of thing, at some of the shallower areas. But the very, very cold water, probably in the low 50s Fahrenheit, water temperature in the main lake, which is, what, 10, 11, 12 degrees Celsius. And that's just the first few inches. You go down any farther. So we're traveling through a recently glaciated landscape. So the mountains you see here, the narrow ridges, the valleys, you'll notice the valley floors are much higher than the level of this lake, hanging valleys. The glaciers that basically carved and sculpted this area, they formed like a big ice cap. The glaciers flowed north and south and east and west. They were not part of those huge continental ice sheets that came down to the northern part of North America, northern Canada. So and the glacier actually that flowed through this main Waterton Valley. It flowed from south of here and it flowed north out on. I mentioned Glacier National Park. It has six peaks that are over 10,000 feet, 6 summits. And actually the highest one, point that out, looking off to your left down to near the end of the lake, and you can see a kind of a triangular shaped peak with a ridge going off to the left. That's Mount Cleveland, and that is the highest peak in Glacier National Park. So it's 10,466 feet above sea level, or about 3,200 meters. So well over a mile from the lake here to the summit of Mount Cleveland. I get one of the 6. So, but our low base elevation gives you the appearance again that it may be higher than some other mountain ranges that might have traveled through. Another mountain here across the lake to the left, up the Mishiwaban Valley. You'll see a mountain, the north face kind of in the shadows, with a few prominent snow fields, still snow from last winter. Doesn't get a lot of sun there. That's called Mishiwaban, and that's one of the hardest climbs. North face is definitely much more sheer. So, in fact, all your crew members, not to boast, but we've been on all the peaks you can see around us, with the exception of a couple here. So, Chris and I have been up to Cleveland twice, I think, over the years. So, 3. He's going to say 3. He's not boasting either. So, but it's a long day to get up to these peaks. It might be a matter of there's no trails to go to the peaks. You're bushwhacking your way up through the trees. Get above.
काशी और लिफाफा पड़ी लिफाफा काश लेके आए नाट के
Which one is the rarest I found yet? Mama, which one is the rarest I found yet? Is it the rarest? Which one is the rarest? Abby, come sit with me. Which one is the rarest I found yet? Abby, come sit down with me. Is this?
काशवी
Rare just for one splash. Yes or no? Should I trade you just for that? Yes or no? Should I trade you it? Oh, you hear the rare song? Rare song? Mama said not to use that because of us. You have to put that back. Yes.
ਵੱਡੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੇ
You have to put that back now.
ਅੱਛਾ ਨੇੜੇ ਨੇੜੇ ਸੈੱਟ
Yes, I know.
ਲੈ ਸਿੱਕੇ ਤਾਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ
Yes, I know.
ਮੇਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ
So it's even harder to find.
ਮੇਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਾ ਜਾ ਬੜੋ ਕਾਸ਼ੂ
Should I trade you the
ਉਹ ਕਾਸ਼ੂ
Should I trade you the rarest rock in the world just for glass? It's
ਮੇਰੇ
not,
ਕੱਪੜਿਆਂ ਤੇ
it's not the rarest rock in the world. But you can keep it.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਲੈ ਜਾ ਤੂੰ ਪਾਣੀ ਚ ਖੇਡ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੂੰ ਜਾ
गाइस देखिए कितना सुंदर नज़ारा है। कैलगरी से 3 किलोमीटर दूर वाटरटन। Thank you.
Nice day, folks. Looks like a campground here off to your right, but this is just a day use picnic area, but good area just to set up your tents, I guess, for the day, get out in some of the sunshine. But, great day to enjoy the park. So if you kind of hold your position or have a seat as we come in, make our entrance back into the arena here, and we'll get into our berth. You can be on your way. Plans or activities you might have planned for the rest of the day. So, if you need a little help with that or directions about other things to do,
आशा है आपको वीडियो पसंद आएगी। प्लीज़ वीडियो को लाइक और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब जरूर करना। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
If you have any other questions too, or just other thoughts, certainly don't feel free to ask. Any event, again, thanks again to everybody for coming along. You did the best thing at the boat. Boat ride is the best thing in the park, I think, so I'm a little biased, but gives you that different kind of look at the valley, so thanks. Gives you a kind of know how Waterton Lakes National Park or Glacier and the International Peace Park kind of fits into the national park system here in North America. We're pretty fortunate to have these kind of things, and we're pretty fortunate in the boat crew to have these jobs, but we like to share with you guys too, so it's your park, so awesome. Okay, hang on, and once everything's secure, we'll give you the okay, and you can be on your way. So thanks again. It is very steep as you get up near the top. Big steps and kind of staircase kind of situation to get up there. So, and the trail for that would start just back up out the town site here, up the hill, just across from the road. And you probably see some people up there right now. You can hike up there. You can hike up there. It's about 800 feet in elevation gain, and you gain it in to get a wonderful view. They hike up to the top of the Bear Summit, and this mountain straight ahead of us on your left is called Crandall Home. With that ridge that kind of comes down towards us, that ridge kind of ends in a knob of rock, and that's called the Bear. And the Prince of Wales Hotel up on the hill there straight ahead of us. So again, that has a short operating season. They opened up early June, and they will be closed by, again, late September. So that opened in 1927. Where it was wood construction and all of that. As you walked in there, the main lobby, the bell tower was straight up, and the main lobby was right down south, right down the south. And you don't have that. It's kind of kiddie corner. Yeah, it's perfect. You can see how the wind takes it off. Just kind of hang out on the beach. Just take it all in. wintertime when the lake freezes over, we get wind gusts here well over 100 miles per hour. That's about 160 kilometers per hour wind gusts at this north end of the lake. So a real windy place. The town site will pretty much shut down by the end of September, early October. A couple of businesses, a couple of hotels open year-round, the Waterton Lakes Lodge and the Glacier Suites, and soon to be the Kilmore Lodge will be open year-round. With 200 inches of snowfall, this town pretty much, the park is always open, but there's not a lot of accommodations. So people do come in, they will go up to Cameron Lake sometimes, and cross-country skiing, so we should go to that area. So. Campground, just off to your left, and there is a sidewalk that goes all along the town site itself. It moves right along, just up from shore. Did not get burned. They saved the structures up there, so all around it all burned, and it moved down the valley here towards the town site, and actually jumped the next valley to the north, the Red Rock Parkway. If you've driven up there, or you'll see more of the aftermath of that fire. And within about 12 to 18 hours, we moved down here on the side of Mount Bertha down to you saw the extent of the fire, how far south it moved. And then it moved north out onto the prairies once it got past the town site. And at that point, once it got out of the mountains per se, it was basically just a grass fire. But again, with all that aspen parkland.
Guys, देखिए कितना सुंदर व्यू है.
Town site along the park entrance road. Again, you'll see evidence of that. And then it burned all the way, it burned 70% of the forested area in Waterton Lakes National Park. And Waterton is really a pretty small national park, about 130,000 acres. And whereas Glacier Park, where we just had visited, is over 1 million square acres. So Waterton is a much smaller park. So the fire burned actually past the park boundary, and there were 6 families on the north side of the boundary. Prairies that lost everything. They didn't lose any lives, I should say that. No lives were lost, no one was injured in this whole episode of the fire. And they lost all their structures. But, and forests, again, they're a good thing. They provide different types of growth, and you can see along the forest floor a little bit more of a close-up of how things are coming back. So it's going to take a while. And if you drive up to Cameron Lake and get a better close-up look at the regrowth, or if you take that other scenic drive up to our Red Rock Canyon or Red Rock Parkway, up the Blackeston Valley. You go up to the end of the road and you park up there, and you can walk into Blackeston Falls. And it's about a 10-15 minute walk and a really nice, basically level trail, well used. And you get to Blackeston Falls and have a new viewing area or deck or observation deck kind of built right over Blackeston Falls. So, but the reason I mentioned a little bit of that height, it's real family-friendly, 10-15 minutes. But as you walk in, you'll start to see the lodgepole pine trees. Again, they're a fire succession tree in this area, and they've already come up to just about knee height.
गाइस देखिए कितना सुंदर नज़ारा है. कैलगरी से 3 किलोमीटर दूर वाटरटन।
Strong winds were forecasted for about 3 days later. And as firefighters established a system or network of hoses and sprinklers all along the back street in the town side of Waterton. If you've been over to Cameron Falls, that area there, backside of Cameron Falls in the back street, the backside of the town site campground, they set up, again, a system of hoses and sprinklers and shooting water 50 feet, even higher in a lot of places. And they had about 3 days to saturate all the vegetation and the foliage there. And fortunately, of course, they had a nice big lake to draw water from. That was probably the biggest thing that they had going for them, we'll say. They had big diesel pumps right on the shoreline with 8-inch diameter intake hoses. And again, had that time. And then on the afternoon of September 11th, another date kind of in our minds of us older folks anyway, on the afternoon and the evening of September 11th, the winds picked up to about 80 kilometers per hour, 50 miles per hour, which is common in this area. And that jump in Continental Divide actually came down right through Cameron Lake area, the area right with helicopters and such, but they, again, couldn't get in the ground. And it was a natural starting forest fire, so again, it wasn't allowed to burn. But the valley where it started kind of opens up the upper part of the valley that opens up to Cameron Lake, or the end of the Cameron Lake Road, Academic Parkway. And it was very dry, hot summer. And the winds were kind of like today, kind of thing. So not a lot of wind, but strong winds were forecasted in the week ahead. And on September 8th, 2017, we were all evacuated from the town site. We were all evacuated. All the businesses shut down. Everybody had to leave. Oh, mule deer out on the shoreline here to your left. So, if you want a better look at the mule deer, walk around town. Pretty much everywhere. You've seen them, okay? But anyway, don't get too close. They, the mothers especially, are real protective of their young ones, which are usually hit the trees somewhere. But on September 8th, 2017, we all left the town site. Again, businesses shut down. Took everything we could. And as we were leaving, there was an estimated 200 firefighters that were coming into the town. So welcome back to Canada, eh? And looking across, again, the lake to the west up the Boundy Valley, you'll see it's the border. So if you didn't get a photograph or get a look up the border swath, you'll get a good look here off to your left here shortly up the Boundy Valley. And you'll see the cut line that goes up through the trees, as mentioned before. So, a closer look here off to the right on the side of Mount Boswell. So, most of the peaks you see around us, kind of throwing out their names just in passing. Mount Boswell to the right, Mount Campbell to the left, Mount Richards ahead of us and across the border. These were named by people that came through here to survey the international boundary back in the late 1860s and 1870s after it was settled. Boundary on the prairies. That's more the case, the habitat where you might find a grizzly bear. The rest of the forested area around us is more likely to find black bears. Probably a better name for black bears than forest bear. Black can be kind of misleading. It's not all black bears are black in color. But across the lake at this point, you see a mountain all the way to the very south. The north face, with a lot of snow on it. That's not a glacier. It's just a snowfield. Again, you really need a map to identify the glaciers remaining in Glacier National Park. So, but that's called Mount Longfellow. Mount Longfellow. Now, in previous years, if you may have traveled with us up until about 2019, we would go all the way down to the south end of the lake with our boat tours. And you can see what running water is doing to the landscape now. It's basically filling in the lakes. The nature of the rock is, again, not, as I mentioned, not really resistant to erosion. And when those creeks and rivers during the month of June, which is our highest, so we get our most precipitation is in the month of June, and with runoff from the snow in the backcountry, those creeks just overflow their banks, carry a lot more rocks and sediment. But when it hits the level of this lake, it just drops it right there. And that's why you see that kind of built up shoreline. So anywhere you see that around the lake, kind of a shoreline built up, you can look for running water. But we've crossed the border, and you don't see a change in the landscape. I might have mentioned that. This is all one large natural ecosystem. Of course, that would change the wildlife in regard to the border. And that was one of the ideas of an international peace park, that since nature sees no boundaries here, why should man? So. And moving through Boundary Bay, off to your right, Boundary Creek comes in, and then you'll get a good look at an interesting feature here of our glaciated landscape. Off to your right, you see a ridge, kind of a silhouette, I guess at this point, with about 5 or 6 pinnacles or spires sticking straight up. You can see that right from town. That's one of the more natural features of the valley here. That's called Island. If you're in the highway crossing the border, you're ready for the question. So, as I mentioned, easy border crossing. A couple of markers there on the shoreline, and then the border swath up the Boundy Valley. So, this would be another. There is a trail that runs from the town site all the way down to the very south end of the lake. So, and there actually is a trail that goes up the Boundy Valley also. So, but we don't bring people down here to go hiking. No, but you can obviously. A couple of markers here on the shoreline. I've never seen so many people take their cameras out at the international border crossing. Do you guys do that at the airport and the highway when you cross the border? You smile. So if you want to get a photograph. Okay, so it's going to come into view here also on your right. You'll see the border swath that goes up the Boundy Valley. You'll see a couple of markers. And wherever you're sitting, you'll get a good look. We're going to do a 300. Glacier National Park, Montana, USA. The elevations gives you the appearance that these mountains might be as high as some others you might have traveled to. So. But now as we cross the lake, you can really see what we're looking at here off to your left, and to the south, and to the right. You're looking at that glaciated landscape. And it's because of this very, very old rock. Those great glaciers of the Ice Age really eroded this landscape. Mudstones, but important fact is in the Canadian Rockies, you don't see any granite or bedrock, which forms a lot of mountain range, especially if you go down into the States, into southern Montana and Wyoming and Colorado. But there you'll see a lot of bedrock. But just looking at those structures, they tell geologists and scientists a lot about what's going on underneath us. So you might have heard a little bit of the expression about Waterton. It's where the mountains meet the prairies. There's no really pronounced foothills as you come into Waterton. You're in the prairies, and all of a sudden you're in this mountain range that around us are about 8,000 feet, 2,600 meters above sea level. Here at the lake, we're at 4,200 feet above sea level, 1,300 meters. So still a lot of vertical relief. But we don't have a lot of high mountains here in the Canadian Rockies. I might mention just a little bit more about that geology, because we talk a little bit about its rocks and glaciers and water. But the rock you see that comprises the mountains here, just talk a little bit about, because you can see it if you have some interest. If you don't, you'll gain some interest as you travel through some other national parks here through the Rocky chevron fold, or an anticline and a syncline. But that's really in a very simplified sort of way how the Canadian Rockies came to be. There was an uplift, there was a folding action to plates of the Earth's crust, and a folding and a thrust fault. It took a long period of time for those rock layers to be folded into that fashion you see here. I guess we're going to do a bit of a turnaround so you can kind of get a good look at that, because it is a pretty interesting, it shows you again how the Canadian Rockies came to be in deference to the American Rockies, which are south of us. It wasn't real close. So, and I might point out real quickly, just, well, a few things, but just off to your left, just above the surface of the water since 1935. So that's basically comparing that to the Keenan Mountain wildfire above the town site and the rest of Waterton. Gives you a bit of a time frame to compare how long it's going to take for that forest to look like this forest here off to your right, well over almost 85 years. But so slowing by the cliff here off to your left, this is the cliff diving portion of the trip. You all get one jump. You paid for it with your ticket. So any takers? Yeah, there's always a few younger guys willing to jump. So yeah, but about 120 feet to the top of the part of the smaller area of glaciation. It's here 4,000 or 5,000 years. Looking across the lake, you'll see a forest of lodgepole pine trees. Coniferous trees that are all about the same height and the same color. Quite a bit different than we saw back behind us. Even milky color right next to the glacier, because the concentration of that rock flour is quite a bit greater, so you get different colors that are refracted or absorbed. If they're all absorbed, then you get kind of white or green color. So that's the long answer to a short question.
आप सभी की आगे की रिक्वेस्ट है, वीडियो को लाइक और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब जरूर करना.
So again, the landscape here, it's all about rock and glaciers and water. So, and all those ice age glaciers move because they create their own movement, because there is so much snow and ice that has built up in the bottom part of that glacier. The ice and snow gets basically, the air gets squeezed out, it gets kind of deformed, and then it will move. Snowfields don't have that depth. And the glaciers that remain in Glacier Park are just acres in size. They don't really have that kind of effect that you would see in some of the other larger glaciers of the world. But as the glacier moves down a mountainside, what makes the color of the lake so green? And that's actually due to the glaciers. Now we aren't going to be able to show you any, there are no glaciers left in Waters and Lakes National Park. There are about 25 or so that remain on the other side of the border in Glacier National Park, but they're pretty small. They estimate it's about 25 or so. It's not those big rivers of ice that you might think about. Glaciers that when it's photographed thousands of years ago. And hopefully you'll see the landscape. You're seeing the landscape today, what it's going to look like in another 50 years or 100 years when children and grandchildren can come back here and see it. And of course, that's one of the ideas of our national parks. It's here to recreate and experience things, but also the other aspect would be to preserve these areas for future generations. So off to your right on the side of Mount Bertha, the vegetation coming up along the forest floor. But again, it's going to take a in North America over the last 50 to 100 years, we've been suppressing forest fires. And then when you do have a forest fire in a particular area, it burns with such high intensity, it threatens a lot of inhabited areas.
देखिए कितना सुंदर व्यू है.
As far as the forest is concerned, it takes a very long period of time for that forest to recover. And that's what happened here on the side of Mount Bertha off to your right. And again, if you've driven up the Cameron Lake or up the Red Rock Parkway, it's going to take a generation before the coniferous trees, the lodgepole pine trees, the Douglas, flowering and spruce. You know, we're traveling through a natural ecosystem here, and so the natural cycles of nature are pretty much allowed to happen in their own way. Except obviously the outside the stairs back there, we are regulated to 20 passengers on that upper deck at any one time. That's the Transport Canada regulation, 20 passengers on the upper deck. So if anyone should come down, we can allow an equal number of folks up to that. First on either side of the valley, so we'll want to take some photographs. No passports, no visas, nothing like that to cross the border. A few things first, before we get too far along, and I get kind of rambling on, so to speak. You're traveling aboard the Miss Waterton. This is our largest vessel. It has a capacity of 125 passengers, and we are inspected by Transport Canada every year in the spring for safe operation on this lake. So just a little bit of that safety information. We do again follow their regulation standards. Life jackets, those of you in the main cabin, they're underneath the benches, and also the bench in front of you has storage for life jackets. Those of you sitting at the back, kind of looking underneath the benches, you're going to have to come forward to find your life jackets. We keep them out of the weather. So plenty of life jackets here in the main cabin for those of you on this lower deck. All the children's life jackets are located up front in the main cabin here at the helm. And if you're on the upper deck, all the life jackets are located at the very forward part of that upper.
जैसे कि गैस आप देख रहे हैं कि हम लाइन में लग चुके हैं और कुछ ही देर बाद हम बोटिंग में बैठेंगे. गैस जैसे कि अब आप देख रहे हैं कि हम लेट पहुंचे हैं. हमने 10 बजे वाली बोटिंग मिस कर दी है और अब हमें 2 घंटे इंतज़ार करना पड़ेगा. 12 o'clock. उसके बाद मैं आपको बोटिंग की सैर कराऊंगा. तब तक हम वाटरटन घूम लेते हैं.
Like actually, Mama, look. Mama, come. How do the batteries help?